Today is a celebration if you are a New York Giants fan because Danny Pennies is officially on the bench. They have finally decided to cut bait with Daniel Jones, and after this season, they are expected to go out there and release him from his contract. In 10 games this season, Daniel Jones had 8 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions with 2 rushing touchdowns. One of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm going to get into all the excuses why Daniel Jones was dealt a raw deal and why, honestly, he was just a terrible quarterback to begin with. When you look at the Daniel Jones era with the New York Giants, the only things that pop out as positives are the fact that they made the NFL playoffs and they defeated the Minnesota Vikings in the playoff game a few years back. That was when Brian Daboll first became the head coach with the Giants. And there was a lot of optimism after that season. But let's rewind a little bit further. They will go on to decline the fifth-year option with Daniel Jones. That's why they got put in this situation. The reason why they declined the fifth-year option, the most passing touchdowns Daniel Jones has ever had in his career in the season came his rookie season. 24 passing touchdowns to 12 interceptions. And those are not bad numbers for a rookie. He did have a fumbling issue his rookie season, but how did he backdoor that season and his sophomore season? 11 passing touchdowns to 10 interceptions. The year after that, 10 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I will say this. He's been one of the most sacked and most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL since 2019. And he got drafted in 2019. He got drafted in the same draft class with Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, Lord bless his soul, and also with Nick Bosa. So that 2019 class has some hitters. Unfortunately for the New York Giants, they got stuck with a mediocre quarterback coming out of Duke. The only reason why he lasted this long with the Giants, except for the fact that he made the NFL playoffs and won a playoff game, is because he went to the same passing academy with Eli Peyton Manning. That was it. And they were huge fans of this kid coming out of college. Huge fans. And ownership, they wanted to basically go into that direction with Daniel Jones. He just was not good enough. I understand early on in his career, he had Joe Judge as a head coach. He may never be a head coach in the NFL ever again. That is how terrible he was. He never had a true number 1 wide receiver until they drafted Malik Neighbors. I fully understand that. But at the same time, he missed a lot of throws. He was a deer in headlights against the blitz. He had a turnover problem. He still has a turnover problem. 8 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions? That's ridiculous. Daniel Jones was never going to be a franchise quarterback for the Giants, based off of what they did with him early on and how things have went over the last few years. And I do understand that he suffered a neck injury. I don't want to hear about that neck injury. That man made the NFL playoffs, won the playoff game, and he was coming off that neck injury. So when you talk about the fact he can't push the football deep down the field, he has a lot of under and overthrows. No, he's just a bad quarterback inside the pocket. He's Danny Pennies. That's who he is. He hasn't thrown dimes since college, and he rarely did it at the college level at Duke. Daniel Jones was just not good enough in the NFL, and it's okay to admit that. And I'm not going to come on here and say fire Joe Schoen, fire Brian Daboll, because they paid Daniel Jones for one in 2022. They had no choice. They declined the fifth-year option because they knew that he wasn't good enough. He went out there. He proved them wrong. Credit to Daniel Jones for doing that. They made the playoffs. He's the quarterback. The quarterback always gets paid. Even if they're mediocre, they're going to get paid a lot of money. They paid him over Saquon Barkley, not because they hated Saquon Barkley or they didn't want to go out there and pay Saquon Barkley a lot of money. It's because Daniel Jones plays a more important position on the field than Saquon Barkley. And majority of the success that the team had did come off the legs of Saquon Barkley, and it also came off the legs of Daniel Jones as well. He had 15 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions. The interception rate was low. That's the lowest it's ever been in his career. Brian Daboll found a formula, but unfortunately it wasn't going to work out and materialize because they did not have a true threat on the outside. You did have Darius Slayton, but he has dealt with a lot of major drops early on in his career, and he's not the most consistent wide receiver to go to. He's not a true number 1. And on the back half of that season, heading into the playoffs, their number 1 wide receiver was Isaiah Hodgins. That was their number 1 guy. And you also had Daniel Bellinger at the tight end spot, but he missed majority of that season dealing with an eye injury. So when I look at the Giants, you put this kid into a tough situation, but when the coaching staff could go out there and mask his weaknesses, he still had a lot of weaknesses on the field. And then we fast forward to the 2023 season. That was a season from hell. And also, by the way, side note here, another reason why they didn't pay Saquon Barkley, he dealt with a lot of injuries. He had an ankle injury and a torn ACL. And he's a running back. The NFL doesn't value running backs like that. He was going to always have a great career outside of the New York Giants if he can go to the right team. Hell, he had a great career with the Giants. And this was a terrible situation with a quarterback that could not push the ball down the field and one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. I'm happy that he's finding success with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sorry if you're a Giants fan, but you have a good running back with this team now. You have Tracy Jr., who is very good in his own right. Give him his respect. Give him his flowers. Every time we talk about the New York Giants, their running back situation, they act like that kid doesn't exist. He's a very good player. He went from being a wide receiver to a running back. He can also catch the football at the backfield as well. But when I look at Daniel Jones, and we go back to that 2023 season, his season was cut short, torn ACL injury. He suffered that injury against the Las Vegas Raiders. But even up to that point, 2 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions, he only had 1 good game. And that was in the back half of the game against the Arizona Cardinals in the second half. He looked like Superman against the Cardinals. That was it. All those other games, he looked terrible. And then we come up to this season right here. Brian Daboll was handcuffed. Brian Daboll has benched players like Kenny Golladay many years ago because he could not catch the football. He could not run routes. He could not get open. Brian Daboll benched him. He was one of the highest paid receivers. Matter of fact, he was the highest paid wide receiver with the Giants at the time because they got him in free agency, and he was a complete bust. Bust of a signing. He benched Deonte Banks a couple weeks ago against the Steelers because of lack of effort. And by the way, I am concerned with him because his second year has not been good. A lot of that is because he misses Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale was a very good defensive coordinator, but he wanted to go off and do other ventures and coach elsewhere. They let him do that. He had a lot of disagreements with Brian Daboll, but he benched Deonte Banks, second-year player. You mean to tell me he wasn't going to go out there and bench Daniel Jones after that terrible performance he had against the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday Night Football? Because the Giants could have easily won 4 to 5 more games right now if he could just go out there and throw to open receivers. Against the Philadelphia Eagles, you have Malik Neighbors pointing at Darius Slayton, pointing at Theo Johnson. They're wide open, but Daniel Jones just doesn't see him. He takes a sack. Against the Dallas Cowboys Thursday Night Football, their defense played phenomenal in that matchup. And yes, they did let a screen pass up for a touchdown to Rico. They played them tough. It was so many chances Daniel Jones had to get the football to Malik Neighbors and other receivers down the field. He just couldn't do it. A bunch of over and under throws. Their offense is terrible, and a good portion of it is because of him. This offensive line, when Andrew Thomas was fully healthy, it wasn't bad. This has been the best offensive line that he's worked with in the past. We hear the excuses. The offensive line is bad. He doesn't have wide receivers. He has Malik Neighbors. He has Darius Slayton. He has Wan'Dale Robinson. These guys are good enough to go out there and get open. He just can't hit them. I saw this offense last season underneath Tommy DeVito be better. They had a pulse. They defeated the Green Bay Packers with Tommy DeVito. Tyrod Taylor went out there and defeated the Philadelphia Eagles last season. Daniel Jones would have lost you those football games. I promise you that. He's not even the second best quarterback on this roster. Drew Lock is better than him. Tommy DeVito is not going to be the long-term answer. I'm not saying that. Drew Lock's not going to be the long-term answer. They still have to go out there through the NFL draft to sign a veteran, bring one of those guys in, and then you develop and you go on from there. But Daniel Jones was never going to be the guy. It was never going to happen. Even if they gave him this super team with a great offensive line and great wide receivers, the one thing about today's NFL, you're going to figure out pretty soon if your quarterback is good or not, because you can scheme guys open. And Brian Daboll gets a lot of credit because of the work he did with Josh Allen. Give Brian Daboll a lot of credit because of the work he did with Daniel Jones as well. And he is coaching for his job for the rest of the season. I think ownership just wants to see them go out there and be more competitive on the offensive end. I'm not saying that Tommy DeVito will go out there and average 3 passing touchdowns a game. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do believe we're going to see Malik Neighbors be better off because of this. Wan'Dale Robinson in particular, who's one of the most slept on receivers in the game. He's very good at getting open. Daniel Jones just can't hit him. And my one critique with Brian Daboll, well, I have a lot of critiques with him as a head coach. Theo Johnson, please use him up the middle of the field. Please use him more in the red zone. He's a walking touchdown machine, possibly at the tight end spot. Use him more. And Brian Daboll, he deserves to have a lot of blame for this as well. Because we look at what happened in the red zone against the Steelers. 2-point conversion play. What the hell is that play? One of the worst plays I've ever seen. this season. So Brian Dable, it's a lot of question marks around him. But the reason why him and Joe Schoen should not be fired after this season, they didn't pick Daniel Jones. He was already here. Brian Dable in particular. Brian Dable showed up. He was already here. Daniel Jones had already been drafted. They were already going through different coaches with him. And maybe Daniel Jones will go off somewhere else and maybe he'll become a solid quarterback option. I think he's a number 2 quarterback at best. And even if he's your backup quarterback, you're in trouble because he's not good. His accuracy sucks. He's just not a good player. So when I look at the Giants right now, you also put him into an awkward situation. Reports about that came out because you were talking with Russell Wilson before the season started. You wanted to bring him in as a starter. And for the ones that saying, hey, no, they're going to bring him as a backup. No, they weren't. Russell Wilson is a better player than Daniel Jones. You go back and look at Hard Knocks. They're talking to Caleb Williams. They were really intrigued with Drake May. They wanted to trade up to get Drake May. But the Pacers said, no, you know what? We're fine. We're going to take Drake May. So the Giants never had the faith in him to begin with because they declined the 5th-year option. They talked to veteran quarterbacks. And by the way, they did this through the public. They did this through public media. They were not sold on him after last season. They were not sold on him a few years ago when they declined his 5th-year option. The Kansas City Chiefs, they did not decline the 5th-year option with Patrick Mahomes. The Miami Dolphins did not decline the 5th-year option with Tua Tagovailoa. We go back many years ago with other quarterbacks that have worked out. Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals did not decline his 5th-year option because they already knew what they had in their quarterbacks. They declined his kid's 5th-year option. Ownership, they have to stay out of the way of this one. And I do fear for Brian Dable because the offense does not look 100% better. They may still fire him because ownership, they love themselves some Daniel Jones. I will say this. They love Daniel Jones. This is the first coaching staff to go out there and basically say, you know what? We're done with him. I can't win games with him. And they literally can't. He has $23 million of an injury guarantee in 2025. That's why they're not going to start him anymore because if he does get injured, you're behind the 8 ball. Right now, he is their 3rd-string quarterback. I wish Daniel Jones nothing but the best in the future. I hope the New York Giants could possibly go out there and finish with a top 3 pick. I'm not saying this because I hate the New York Giants. I want to see the Giants go out there and have a chance to go draft a guy like Shedeur Sanders, which is laughable at this point because Deion Sanders is not going to let Shedeur go to the Giants. But a guy like Cam Ward, hey, maybe that could be your guy. Or maybe Quinn Ewers from Texas. One of those quarterbacks could possibly land with the Giants, and we can see Brian Dable finally go out there and work his magic. But I'm not 100% sold on Brian Dable. And I know one thing for sure. Daniel Jones is out of the door after this season. So it's a celebration if you are a Giants fan. You get rid of the pennies on your team. Danny Pennies will no longer be with the Giants after this season. And that's the reason to celebrate. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about this entire conversation about Daniel Jones and everything moving forward with the Giants? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, we want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.